Hi, I'm RC Jim, and today I've got some Radiomaster magic for you. No, we haven't taught them how to multiply, but we are talking about using two radios. Two radios together as a buddy box system. Let's begin with a big picture. You're trying to train somebody how to fly an airplane. You could just simply set up the airplane and a radio, go out there, do your best to fly it, crash it, problems. You could hand it back and forth. By the time you hand it to the other person, when they get in trouble, you crash it. So the best thing to do is to have two radios set up, one for the instructor, one for the student, and the instructor can begin with it in his control. He's got control of it. He gets it up in the air, gets it up at a safe height, and then he flicks a switch and hands it over to the student, and now the instructor has no control, but the student has control. The student gets in trouble, the instructor flicks the switch back, the instructor again has control. Beautiful way to set it up. With the system that we're looking at here, we are utilizing an extra module on the back here to be able to control the plane. And by the way, there would normally be an antenna on there, but we don't have to worry about it in close proximity. But this module here is connected to the plane. That's a little transmitter that's sending the signal to the plane. And inside here is a 4-in-1 transmitter that can be used as a receiver, and it's receiving the signal from this radio. So the student radio is able to send a signal to the instructor's radio. The instructor's radio can decide whether to use that signal or to use its own control outputs to be able to control the airplane. That's the wireless system. You can also connect it with a cable, and that's just simply by, in the top of the radio here, plugging into this little jack with a normal mini plug, and that cable can run across to the other transmitter. And with that one, you wouldn't need to have this extra module in the back. You just simply have this radio connected to the plane with its internal module, and the cable would be used to get the signal from the student radio when that's desired. So we're going to begin by showing you the setup for this wireless system. And then following that, we'll just very briefly show you how you could use the cable. And of course, most of the setup is going to be the same. It's just a couple of settings that are different for having the cable. So let's get right into it. Now the first thing that we need to do is to set up a plane in the master transmitter. And this is done just exactly like you would do it. In fact, this particular plane was already in this transmitter. Apologies for the sounds. Because the switch is in a certain position, it tells us those things. But anyway, I already have this plane in there, so I didn't have to do much of anything in terms of setting things up. In our model settings, we've got our normal set of inputs there. We've got all of the different flight modes, all of that all set up, and just like you'd be flying it like normal. So that's pretty straightforward. The next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that in our system menu we are set up for the trainer. So we press the system button, we then press the trainer sort of thing there, and then with that we then have these options that we have. Now as you see the replace, that could either be off, add, or replace. Off means it's not going to accept any signal from the student. Add means that whatever signal is coming from the student is going to get modified by whatever is happening on the instructor radio. The two things are going to get added together. So let's say the student has got full right aileron on, and you've got it in the add. You could go full left and bring it back to nothing. This one would affect what's happening with that. The student can still be messing around with things, changing around. The instructor can be messing around with things. And of course the problem is the student doesn't know what the instructor is doing, and so he's going to get totally confused. So most likely you just want to have replace, and what that means is when you flick the switch for the student
has control.
Then the student has complete control, and the instructor's controls aren't going to do anything at all. When you flick the switch back,
Instructor has control.
then the instructor has control, and the student can be flipping switches and sticks all over the place, and it's not going to do anything. Okay? So replace is probably what you're going to use there for all of those. Next, you need to make sure that the channel order matches what the student radio has. So AETR is sort of a normal 4-in-1 module type thing. But, you know, whatever the radio is that's transmitting the signal to this one, those things have got to match. And so this is where you can make them match up. So here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, normal AETR. Then you've got this 100%. That can be used if for some reason the student radio signal isn't coming through quite enough. And the only real reason for that happening is you might have the rates set at less than 100% in the student radio. And this could be used to bring it back up. But why not just simply have 100% rates in the student radio and everything is fine? And that multiplier can be used in that same sort of way. Okay, so we've got that all set up in there. Then what we do next is we go back and we go to our model settings. And we've got both internal and external RF that we're going to set up, as well as trainer. We're going to do all three of those things. So the internal RF is the 4-in-1 module, and this is what we need to use to pick up the signal from the student radio. So I've selected the multi-module, and you see the DSM-RX. Now, anything in here that has an RX on the tail end of it can be used if it matches your student radio. So Fly Sky RX, FS2A RX, any of those could be used for that. But I decided to go with the DSM simply because in our club we have a lot of Spectrum radios. And a friend that I'm training at the moment, he also has a Spectrum radio in addition to the Radiomaster. And that allows me to have the student radio be a Spectrum radio and still be able to work with this. So that's why I'm using the DSM-RX. So all of that is pretty much the same. You want a unique ID, and when we're ready to go, we'll be binding this. So now we've got the internal RF all set up. We've already done the external RF. That was getting the communication to the plane all sorted out. And by the way, those two could be swapped in terms of what is used for what. It makes no difference where the 4-in-1 is. Just the 4-in-1 needs to be the one that communicates with the student radio. So for us, we get the 4-in-1 internal. So that's the communication with the student radio. That's acting as a receiver. The external RF is ELRS, and that's communicating to the plane. So we got those sorted out. Now for the trainer. With the trainer, you've got a bunch of choices here. Master jack, slave jack, that has to do with when you've got the cable plugged in, but we need master multi. And so that's all that's needed for that. Let's go back. And we want to go to the model settings. So press the model button, and we want the special functions. That's not special functions, or special functions. Okay? Now there's a few things that you need to set up in here. You need to set up this trainer one. So these won't be in there when you go to it the first time. So what you'll be doing is you'll go to the bottom of the list, and you'll just pick the plus to add it. But then the first one you want to add is this trainer axis. So with the trainer axis, first off, you pick a switch that you want to use. Now I decided to use the switch F, which is in the back at the top. So the switch up here in the back, that tall one, I'm using that because as you are working with a student, you're going to have your right hand over on the stick on the right, and I use mode 2. So the stick on the right, I've got like a normal joystick for flying, and that's most likely what I'm going to need to be using to recover from whatever unusual thing the student has done. So I'd like to have my finger out, or my thumb on that all of the time, which then means I want to use my left hand to flick the thing on and off. There's no momentary switches over there on the left-hand side, but this big tall switch in the back is just a 2-position switch. Normally I'd have landing gear on that, but it's not likely that I'm going to be using landing gear with a student, so I use that for giving control to the student and back. So that's that. So to pick that, when you go in there, there'll be nothing there, and you just simply flick the switch, and that's saying that switch F is in that position coming back this way. So that's what I want. Hit enter. The function is trainer, so you just pick from all of that list the trainer function. And then axis. With that, you have a choice between axis, the 4 individual controls, and channels. C-H-A-N-S stands for channels. Now, axis means just simply the input from the 4 sticks. Rudder, elevating, throttle, or aileron, if you pick one of those, that's going to be all that the student can control. And channels means all of the channels in the radio will be sent across from the student. So if it's got flaps, if it's got landing gear, if it's got smoke, whatever else, all of that's going to be coming across. Okay? Most of the time, axis is all you want. You're training a student, you just want to get them familiar with the flight controls. So we use that particular one. So press in the wheel under axis. I can get my finger over there. And that's it. And then we need to enable it. So we press that button down there.
Instructor has control. Student has control.
Okay. Now that student has control and instructor has control, that's something that I've added in. Now, I thought that it had sound tracks in there for that, and I couldn't find them. So I created my own. The key thing is that if you're doing the sound tracks, you do need to have the correct format for the file. And I'll just look it up here. Okay, we want to have a PCM uncompressed mono. They say that a 32 kilohertz sample rate will work. For me, it just got static when I did that, so I used 16 kilohertz. So 32, 16, or 8 is supposed to work, but I set it at 16. And then for the frame size, 16 bits. So you have those settings on a WAV file, and you just simply put them on your SD card under the sounds, and then you'll have access to them. Needs to be just 6 characters or less for the name of it, but once you've got those things in there, then you go here and you create yourself a new thing. So the button in over what you want.
Instructor has
you flick the switch in the place where you want it. Hit enter. Play track. The track that you want played, student has control, and enable. And you do that same sort of thing for the instructor. So that gives you the sound
Instructor has
confirmations. Control. And that can be quite good as you're training somebody, is that the minute you flick that switch, that thing goes off. And so, if you take a few seconds to think about saying your plane or my plane or whatever, well, this has already announced it, and it's plenty loud enough for the student to hear. Okay, so that's everything that you need in the instructor radio. So now let's have a look at what you need to do in the student radio to get it set up. Obviously, you need to have a model, but in this case, we want a model that doesn't have any expos or rates or anything like that set up. So as you think about your inputs here, no dual or triple rates, there's no expo, nothing like that, just all set at 100%. For your basic 4 channels: aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder. So extremely simple as far as that is concerned. If we're using the radio, then we need to, let's get out of this, and we go to the model. And as we are setting up the radio over here, well, we've got this trainer function over here. We're not going to use that. We're going to leave that off. Now, if we had a cable, we'd be saying this is a slave and using the jack in the top. But since it's being used as a radio, the instructor radio doesn't know any different as far as, you know, whether this thing is slave or whatever else. It just knows that this radio is sending a signal to it, and it decides what to do with it. So this doesn't have to do anything with that. So you just leave that off. We've got our internal RF, and so we've got to set that up to bind with the instructor radio. So I'm picking the DSM compatible. DSM-X is what you want, and it's not terribly critical in this situation, but that's the normal setting that is going to be used when you're flying a plane, and so it makes sense to use that here. It's a lot better than the DSM-2. We have to have a unique channel for this, so we go down to the bottom and we make sure we've got a unique ID there. And if that isn't unique, press in the button and scroll until you find a unique one. And then, of course, we're going to bind it. So we're all set to bind as far as that is concerned. So now that we're ready to bind them, we fire up our instructor radio as well. And, get it in there. Of course, we've already done our setup in here, but we haven't bound it to the, well, actually I have, but imagine that you haven't yet bound it to the student radio. So you think of this as being the receiver and this as being the transmitter. So this is all set to bind as if you're binding it to an airplane. That's all ready to go. But in here, we need to go to those model settings. We need to come over to the RF that's going to be used. So we're sending a signal from the student radio to the internal 4-in-1 module. Then the external module, which is ELRS in this case, is sending the signal to the plane. And of course that doesn't have to be ELRS, that could be anything that's compatible with the plane. So right now, if we want to connect these together, we have to go to the internal module. And this is all set to bind. And so what I'm going to do is remove this some distance away when I bind it, but I'm going to click on that bind button. And then with that one ready to go, I'll then click on this one. Okay, that one's all set to go. Now I'll get this one going. Okay, this one rattled or did what it does, and so let's see if indeed they're working. Let's get this one to where we can see what we've got going in it. Okay, so right now this has got control. You can see the things going back and forth. So got control there. We flick the switch up. Got no control there, and we've got control happening over here. So that's all bound and all set to go. So it's just as simple as that as far as setting up the student radio. Now the question comes up, what if you don't have that extra module on the back and you just want to do it with a cable? Well, quite simply, as far as connecting the cable, that happens on the top. And a little hole on the side there, so just plug it in there. And this particular cable is a stereo cable, but I think a mono cable is fine as far as what you need to make it work, but this one does work. Okay, so we got the cable connected, and then we just need to tell it that we're using the cable. So on our student radio, we'll go to model settings, and we will go down. I guess we go to trainer, and we will say this is a slave with a jack. So plugged into the jack on the top, Okay, and that's done. And then on the instructor radio, we go to model, and we go to trainer, and it's master multi, but we want to go back to master jack. So it's going to use the jack, and it's going to be the master. And so as we look at it now, let's see, this is our master radio here. So we got control of everything. No control on the student radio.
Student has control.
And now the student has control. And no control over here. So works exactly the same way. It's just a matter in those trainer settings under the model menu. You set it to master jack and slave jack. Well, thank you for watching today. We really appreciate your support along the way. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe. Just click on that little circle there with my picture in it, and then have a look at another relevant video on our channel. I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day and enjoy your flying.